All right. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Legend Status podcast. We are here with a good friend, teammate, of course, entrepreneurial mind, Mr. Azar Chatur. How do
Chatur,
I?
yeah, you got it.
Chatur? Okay, perfect. Um, Sorry, I don't know the role, but he's with the Knowledge Society, so TKS. I recently found his way into Calgary, Alberta. And yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about his journey. We're going to talk about how they impact the youth. There's sort of an age range, flexible age range that you guys work with. So yeah, first off, thank you so much for doing this, man. It was exciting the moment that I got you on the list. I was like, oh, this is going to be a great conversation. For a little bit of background, Azar and I played in a really awesome season, ended a little bit heartbreaking, but an awesome season of basketball together. Had a couple of pretty good conversations right away, so I thought this would be really great. But anyway, thank you for coming on, and how are you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man. Happy to be here. Excited to be on the podcast. I'm pretty sure this is like my first podcast that I've been on as a guest.
Nice,
So
nice.
I like flirted with creating a podcast like a few years ago, but only got through like an episode or two. So now I'm the guest and excited to be here. So it's good.
Well, I hope that I can return the favor at some point in time. I remember watching, I think I saw a meme or something where just as I was filming the first episode of this, the meme was like, every idiot in the world has a podcast now. And I was like, I don't know, should I be doing this? No, but you know what? It's exciting. I think the goal for myself is just to share a lot of stories and connect with people on maybe deeper level. Have a chance to have people learn from that, right? So today, let's talk about you and the journey. First off, tell us about yourself, background, a little bit of the origin story of Mr. Azar.
Yeah, so I grew up playing like sports pretty heavily. Like I went to a school called St. George's High School in Vancouver. And yeah, I grew up just like actually, so our high school gave these pins. It was like a private school, so you wear like blazers, suit and tie, everything. And you got
Okay.
these pins for participating in like varsity level sports. And like my goal in high school was like, how can I get the most pins on my blazer? It was like a flex.
Yeah.
And so I just like I literally played like everything. I played tennis, basketball, soccer, track, cross country. Like
Holy crap.
I even tried out for the badminton team. I was like one of they took like all these people on the team, and I was like one of two people to get cut on badminton. So that one I've stayed away from. But
Yeah.
I've always been really competitive. Grew up in that like sports kind of environment, and continued on with track and field and cross country into university. So I was really focused in sports, and then that kind of transitioned into business. So eventually I kind of like my love for running kind of started slowing down a little bit, and I left the running team, kind of focused all of that energy that I was putting into sports into like business and entrepreneurship kind of stuff. And my dad has kind of been an entrepreneur himself growing up, and so I think I that's why I kind of navigated towards that field. But yeah, I went to UVic, went in through the business program over there, graduated from there, and just like started working in Victoria for a few different tech startups out there, and then ended up starting my own company. So my whole like backstory has kind of been in the entrepreneurship like startup world. And then eventually I transitioned more towards the investing side of startups. So as opposed to like building, investing. And then now I'm mentoring other students who want to go off and kind of take the entrepreneurial route, um, or yeah, work for a different, some sort of startup, or work at a research lab, or yeah, it's more of a mentorship role now. Yeah.
Why that transition? Like, I understand why generally people come out of startups and get into investing. You've maybe accumulated some, money, or you've built some connections to sort of put things together. But why the transition eventually to mentorship? But why from startup to investing? Why that transition?
Um, yes, I think for me, it was kind of like, it was the opposite of what you said. You said accumulated wealth or whatever. Like I lost my money in my startup. So it was going strong. Like it definitely like had the potential to make, I think, a lot of money. COVID really screwed up our business. So I guess like I'll just give you some backstory on the business.
Yeah.
So it's called Matrix Furniture. It was a like space saving furniture company. So, like Murphy
Oh,
beds,
okay.
the beds come off
Yeah.
the wall. And like when it's up, it was functional furniture. So when it was up, it would be like a desk or a table
I see.
or a sofa or something like that. And then when it came down, it would be the bed. And we were providing that furniture to universities, high schools for like dorm rooms kind of thing. Exchange students would come and like board. And so if you think of like your typical dorm room, you don't have a lot of space. It's like the size of a parking stall, but you have to squeeze in like a
Everything.
bed, a desk, dresser. There's just so much. So it's like, why is it laid out like that? Like, why is the furniture three different pieces of bulky furniture taking up all the space? So that's where the idea for this came in. And we started with that as our like target market. And we started expanding to like developers, and we were trying to get like the bigger ticket orders, not selling like one off to like you or me. And then we actually met with the Toronto Raptors I was telling you about earlier,
Yeah, very cool.
because they were interested in putting in furniture like that for some of their employees who stay late overnight and doing like video edits or whatever for the games. And sometimes they stay like overnight and they need a place to stay. So they thought these bed desk things would work really well. But then unfortunately, COVID happened and our manufacturer was in China. And so literally his factory shut down and our business, like we just didn't have a product basically to sell. We were essentially the middlemen in that business. So we had to give up our, like we had a showroom downtown that we were renting. We had product that we'd bought to like put in the showroom as well as for potential like clients. We'd like installed some furniture there. So we took a hit on product and we took a hit on like lose it, like the rent that we were paying and the lease that we had.
Goodness.
So everything kind of like just like almost within a matter of a couple months just like ended. And we literally ended up losing that business. It was like a really hard year for me after that, because I'd felt like I put in my like 3 years of work, like building this like baby up, and it was just about to like go off and do great things. And then it just
Right.
like died. So I was like kind of depressed for a year.
Fair.
And then, so going back to your question now of how did I transition from that to venture capital? So I didn't really know what to do with my life after that point. And I ended up just going and doing MBA program at UBC just to try to like figure out what I wanted to do
Yeah.
next kind of thing. And it was through that I learned about, or I really got exposed more to the venture capital side of things and learning more about finance and how, businesses get their money and that kind of thing. And that was kind of interesting to me. So I was like, okay, like, it's still kind of in the startup world, but it's just on the flip side of the equation where now I get to like fund startups as opposed to building them. And so I switched into that. And then it was like, it felt pretty rewarding because you'd see these like young, startup founders coming in. It was an early stage VC fund. So they were like pretty new to the game. Like they didn't have too many customers, if any. They had like a prototype and they had like a plan of action, and we got to decide whether or not they made sense to invest in. And then you could start to see like the success they were having. It was, I guess it was an exciting period of time for me, but it was short lived. I only did that for a year. And then I ended up switching to TKS.
Okay. Walk like if we have a young entrepreneur looking to fund a startup, looking for VC, looking for investors, looking for seeding, could you give them maybe just a quick crash course on what that would look like? Like, what type of presentation, who would they discuss with? Like, is there some tips or at least maybe just sort of a blueprint of how you would approach somebody in VC?
Yeah, and I think maybe the first thing I'll say is like not everyone needs to go to VC or angel investors to start a company. And I think that it's like a lot of people think, oh, like I don't have much money, so I need to go here to get it. But you also have to keep in mind that they take up space on the cap table. So as soon as you get money from someone else, like now you lose a bit of control in your own company. And so the more and more that piles up. So you just kind of have to be careful about how you're going around fundraising. And sometimes it's better to just bootstrap it and be a little bit gritty about how you go about starting your company until you get a little bit more traction. But of course, it just depends on the situation and whatever. But yeah, if you are just making the decision to go for venture capital, it's really important to find investors that really align with you and the company that you're trying to build. Like you don't want, like there's the right type of investor and then there's the wrong type of investor. So you want ones that really like align with you and the vision that you have for your company. And so just like I would say just be careful with who you get in bed with essentially. And then in terms of like the way you present yourself, especially if you're an early stage company. Like you just have a product, maybe you don't even have customers yet, but this is your idea, and you have maybe a little bit of traction, but it's not maybe in the form of paying customers. Maybe you have a bunch of subscribers or like people on your wait list or things like that. I'd say a lot of the early stage VC companies are really looking at the person behind the company as opposed to the company itself. It's like they're making a bet on you at the end of the day. It's like, do we trust this person to like take this company to the next level? And so the qualitative factors of the business are way more important in the early stage. So if you're like a student, like just starting out, as opposed to if you're like a later stage company with revenue and clients and customers and all that, then they're looking more at the financials. So you kind of have to you really have to play into that, the qualitative factors and like what your strengths are and why you think you make sense to be the founder of this company.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think there was something that I had learned through that process too, realizing that, yeah, everybody thinks, geez, I just need the money. But there's a lot more resources in VC and private equity, and people can go, hey, like, why don't I give you this, but I can also help with your marketing, or I can help with, other pieces or the accounting. So you're right, there is a factor there of alignment. And I think that's in any business or partnership as well. So why then from VC now to the mentorship portion? Because
Yeah.
that happened pretty quick, I think, for yourself too, right? Like,
Yeah, it did. I thought I was going to stay in venture capital for a
okay.
little bit longer. I did enjoy working in the VC space, but yeah, I kind of just like kind of by accident almost kind of got exposed to TKS, and I went to do a talk at a high school, Mulgrave in North Vancouver, or not North Vancouver, West Vancouver. And I was talking to like an entrepreneurship class, and these kids had all been like working on their like own little business ideas kind of thing. And they wanted me to come in and just talk about VC to them. And the company I worked for, they'd given me like a presentation deck to go in, and I could like use that to explain to the students about venture capital. But I think they sent me the wrong presentation deck, because it was like, I think it was meant for like, if you were pitching to limited partners about why they should invest in your like VC firm. I'm like, these kids aren't like, we're not trying to get money from these kids. Like it was the wrong deck. And so like last minute had to switch up, and I just like off the cuff was telling them about what VC is and like how it works. And then I kind of transitioned it to create a more like interactive 2-hour session with them, where they came out, I told them to go up and like pitch their business to me as if like I was an investor who was like looking to invest in their companies. And so each group came up and like pitched to me, and then I would like critique them as if I was a VC on like, okay, you could have done this better, you could do this. I was like very like raw and unfiltered with how I was going about it.
Nice.
And the teacher of that class at the end was like, I thought was like super valuable. Like, I don't think like the students were used to having a presentation like that or like a workshop like that or whatever. Have you heard of TKS? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he said, oh, you should look into that, because the style of presentation or like workshop that I ended up doing was, I guess, aligned to what TKS does in their sessions. And so he said, yeah, look it up. And if you're interested, like I'll like make the intro for you. And I think you'd be like potentially a good fit as one of their directors to work with the students, basically doing what you just did. And I went in the car, like on my way home, I like was driving, and I was kind of like crying a little bit, like tears, like I had tears in my eyes, because I was like, wow, that like anything I'd just done in venture capital, like for the last year, basically, like didn't feel as rewarding as that 2-hour session, because I felt like I really made an impact for those kids who were in that room. And like, I felt like I gave each one of them like real advice that they could go off and use if they wanted to go start their own companies and make their own impact in the world. And I was like, if I could do that as my job, then that would be pretty sick. So yeah, I ended up getting in touch with TKS and went through this like 8-month long application process, and ended up, the job was in Calgary, so moved out to Calgary.
Wow. That's a really cool story as to how it transitioned, because I do find there's always almost an event or sort of a turning point where people get into, or maybe discovering the fulfillment of leadership and mentorship, and it's clear that that's sort of where you found it. So wow, that's a really cool story, man. Okay, so let's jump to TKS. And what is the program? What do you guys do? What is your role within the company?
Yeah, so TKS, we're the world's top youth innovation program for teenagers who are typically between the ages of 13 to 18 years old. We help students. Our whole goal is to help students kind of like reach these outcomes that they want to achieve. So we're always looking, like the people who join our program are typically very ambitious, curious, young, driven kids who like come in knowing that they want to be like, an innovator, or they want to, work for some cool startup company or work in the field of artificial intelligence or gene editing or whatever it is. And so, but they don't really have a pathway to do that. So the typical school system isn't really built for that. It's built to get kids, like give them a degree and go to university. And then the university thing is like, okay, you go through the 4 years, you get a piece of paper, and then you look for your job when you're like 24 or 5 years old. And so here at TKS, it's not really about like, okay, we don't want you to wait till you're 25 years old to figure out your career. Like, why can't you start now? And if you think of like some of the most famous, most influential people in the world, Bill Gates, for example, started fiddling around with computers when he was like 13, 14 years old. He built Microsoft when he was 20. If you think of Elon Musk, he was building video games when he was 14. So it's like, why can't these students, especially now with like artificial intelligence, like we have all the tools at our disposal, like why can't they start earlier? Like they don't need to wait till they're 25 years old. Even if you take sports, for example, like Kobe Bryant started playing basketball when he was 3 or 4. Serena Williams, same thing. Like she was playing tennis when she was 3 or 4. It's like, you don't need to wait until you're older, like start earlier. And so that's what we prepare kids to do. It's like, it's not just about teaching the technology or science aspect of things or even the business side of things. It's like, okay, what about like even as simply as like shaking someone's hand? Like who teaches a kid like how to shake someone's hand? Make sure you're looking in the person's eyes, or grip with a firm handshake, like even the smallest things, or like how to give a proper presentation. Like a high school presentation is very different from like, if you're going to pitch to an investor your business. So how do you like create a high standards pitch deck and be able to communicate effectively all the points that you need to communicate to like make someone want to invest in your company, for example, right? Or how do you work in teams effectively? Like there's so many like soft skills combined with like technical skills that students need to build in order to create those like asymmetric outcomes that TKS that helps them to get to.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think a part of where that comes from is, and I say this with all due respect to the world, like, do you think part of it is how some of the youth is being raised currently? When I think I was just, the last conversation I had with a friend who has a young men's boys development program, we talked about the lack of, guidance or leadership maybe in the household that has stopped. Like, who taught me how to shake somebody's hand and have a good conversation is my mother, my father. So do you feel that maybe is part of the reason why something like TKS is needed, or do you feel that it's sort of supplementing that and just making it more refined?
I think it's like, yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like, I don't think all parents do that, right? I think like certain parents will be harder on their students, or maybe harder is not the right word, but like will like teach them those skills earlier. But I don't think all parents do. Like we've had situations where kids in the program, like they'll come in, even though like the way they dress is like, professional, or even like maybe they don't shower for a few days and
Right.
they smell bad. Like I have the job of like telling them, like I have to tell them like, yo, you need to get new clothes or go in the shower. Like we can't have this happening if people don't want to sit next to you. Like,
Right.
but who tells them that? Their teachers don't tell them that. Right. And maybe their parents are used to it and whatever, it's their kid. So maybe they're a little easier on them. So I think it's like, and I take it really seriously. It's like my job to like prepare these kids for the real world when they go off and like, end up working somewhere or starting their own thing or whatever. Like they have to come off like not as like some like scrub,
Right. Yeah.
like,
100%.
and it's important. And so and I mean, TKS, they give us like, as a director, like I have like a certain curriculum that like all the directors, I should have actually mentioned this. We're a global company. So I'm in Calgary, but TKS is located all over the world. We have in-person locations in Vancouver, Toronto, Dubai, San Francisco. We're launching this year, New York. And then we also have a virtual program. But all of our directors, like the people like me, we come with different skill sets And we kind of, each program is a little bit different in its own way because of the experience that a director brings to the program. So I come with like an entrepreneurship, business, venture capital background. Another director will come with like, maybe it's an AI background or a gene editing background or an engineering background. And so they can kind of like transform the program slightly to match like their background and their experiences. But TKS gives us like somewhat of a curriculum to go through, and we have like certain steps within the program of like milestones students need to hit along the way, things that they need to learn. And then like things like the handshake or like making them speak a little bit louder, or even like the way that they present their presentations. Like sometimes like those little pieces of advice might be different from director to director. So I just try to do the best I can do for the kids, and each director does the same thing, but the outcome might be slightly different.
Right. What's the format? Is it, so you said there's a curriculum, but is it a, like a 4-week program, or is it a, a year long? How do you guys structure it? Or do you have different workshops that are a little bit shorter? Like, what is the format of the program?
It's a 10-month program, starts in September, goes through till June. Every week we have a session with them every weekend, and it works alongside of their school schedule. So they go to school Monday to Friday, and then they come to TKS on whether it's Saturday or Sunday, they choose. And then during the week, like on their own time, there'll be like a few expectations of like certain work that they do to prepare for the session on the weekend. It's kind of like if you think of, when you were in high school or when I was in high school, like basketball and track and sports used to be like my extracurricular. That's what I would do in my spare time. For these kids, it's like this is their extracurricular. Like, so some of them might also be doing sports or like debate club or this or whatever. But this is just another one of those extracurriculars for them. But it's very focused on like, how can we help you create like asymmetric outcomes in the world and solve big problems?
And what are some things in the program? So you talked a little bit about, things as small and as simple, I guess, as a nice handshake or speaking a certain way. What are some other things? Like, give us some idea of how you can, maybe provoke critical thought or to kind of pull some of that from people.
Yeah. So I guess so the program is structured in a way where it's very centered around project building. So unlike in school where it's more like memorize for this test and write your answers and you get graded and all that, there's no like grades or anything at TKS, or there's nothing you need to like memorize necessarily. It's all about, okay, like what can you build? And like by the end of it, it's like, let's see what your portfolio looks like. So you'll create your own website. You'll have all the projects that you build, whether it's an article, whether it's running a simulation, whether it's like physically building something. All of these like components are things that we'll do in the program. And those are the outcomes that we look for. And then the first, like, I'd say 2 months of the program are really focused on exploration. So a kid might come in and not be fully sure what he or she wants to do. And so we'll expose them to a bunch of different problems that are happening in the world, a bunch of different emerging technologies and sciences that are happening in the world. And then through that first initial like 2-month process of exploration, I, as a coach, kind of work with each student individually to kind of help them narrow in on something that they're really excited about. And then we'll spend the rest of the 7 or 8 months in the program building things. And so a typical session, if you come to TKS, like the first half of the session, which is 3-hour-long sessions. So the first like hour and a half is like a lot of me talking, probably telling them about the latest advancements in robotics and what the future is going to look like this year and maybe the next couple years, and what advancements are happening in the robotics space and blah, blah, blah. What companies are the big companies to look out for? What, like, how does an Arduino board work? Like, whatever, all these things. And then the second half is about like, it's the kind of time given to them to build something. So I'll give them time to like, okay, like, hey, here, try doing the simulation. Here's a video you can watch. Let's see, like, let's try and work on this to build X, Y, or Z. And then like come up and present what you did. And so it's like all about like hands-on, like putting pen to paper and doing things as opposed to like what you would typically expect in a school setting.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the first piece that you said there is so important. I think about when I was in high school, I would have never known And I mean, there's days today where I wake up, I'm a 39-year-old man, and I'm like, what do I want to do with my life? Could you imagine what that would be for a 13, 14-year-old boy or girl, or, when I think about that challenge that people face, because you're right, they might not be exposed to certain problems in the world, and they might not know what things that would pull passion from them almost, right? So I think that's incredible. And I think the other piece is that you're right, school today has always been memorize this, don't forget that, and write this out, instead of what can you create, what can you execute, and don't know where to go for just the information, because the information will always sort of be there, but what can you do with that information? Like, what is the practical execution that you can handle? I think that's really incredible.
Whatever that like area of interest is for them that we figure out in the first couple
Right.
months, like that could change. Like that's totally okay. Right. So like maybe because they are like 14 years old or whatever. So like,
Yeah, exactly.
let's say 2 years go by and they learn about something else, or even a few months go by and they're like, oh, I just learned about this in the program. I kind of want to switch my area of focus to this. That's fine. But what we're trying to teach is like the process of like how to go from like taking whatever the interest is to like getting to a point where you become an expert in whatever that field is. So it's important for them. Like I try to tell them, I'm like, okay, like wherever point we're at in the first like 2, maybe 3 months, let's just like select whatever that interest area is like that you currently have. And if that changes during the course of the program, depending on the timing, maybe we just like don't follow that area of interest for the rest, because the more important thing I want them to take away is just like the process of how to go from idea to like expert level, and then they can take those skills that they've learned and apply it to the next thing, whatever
Right.
it is, right? So it's totally okay for them to change their mind or whatever, but that process piece is so important, of like, even like things like going on LinkedIn. Like a lot of these kids don't have LinkedIn accounts, but like we get them on LinkedIn and we get them starting to talk to mentors on there and like setting up calls and sending out Google Calendar invites and doing meetings
Nice.
and all
Very
those
nice.
kinds of things. But you kind of need to get us to a certain level of like project work that you can show before you like set up a meeting with like, a founder at some big company,
Right.
right? So you
Right.
like they have to like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just interested in this, like let's have a meeting. Like you have to be like, hey, like I just wrote this article, ran the simulation on this same topic your company is working on, let's have a meeting, and there'd be way more likely. So yeah, that process is like super super important for them to learn at this age.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. What's kind of the origin story of TKS? Like, how did that come about? Because it's pretty clear that there was some really deep work put in, especially with the current generation. Because again, I think I remember somebody said to me, we went from the age of information to the age of now execution to, at some point in time, the age of innovation. But I think the age of information was, we were just being bombarded with so much information and so many different things that probably most people did not know what to do with it. So when the age of execution came about, it was, no, you have to act upon it, you have to build something with it, you have to do something with it. But was there, like, how did that, I guess, come about? Like, how did TKS, how was it born? What was the logic behind it, I guess, and how did it come to be?
Yeah, so the founders of the company, Naveed and Nadeem, they're brothers, actually from Calgary. And
Oh,
so
cool.
had Naveed had his own startup or company that he ran and operated, which got acquired. And then Nadeem was like working at McKinsey, and like he had a bunch of consulting experience and things like that. And I think once like they got to a point where they were like, okay, like we have money, but like what can we do with it, kind of thing, and like how
Right.
can we like create impact in the world. And their idea of how to go about creating impact in the world was to like create an army of other people who can go off and solve all these big problems, because maybe they could like together try solving one thing, right? Or they could like literally create an army of people who can go about and like individual kid can go off and solve different things, and together maybe we can solve multiple problems in the world today. And so that's kind of how this idea of creating TKS came about, starting with the young high school students that don't really have a proper path to go about how to start their own companies or work for innovative startups, or everyone's so the school system is like, and so it's like, how can we go about like fixing that, creating this army of innovators to go off and solve like all of the world's biggest problems? And so that's their line of thinking. And that's when TKS started about 9 years ago in Calgary. And then they moved it to Toronto. So they kind of like tested it out briefly in Calgary, moved to Toronto, really launched it over there. And then now we have it in cities all over the world. And we brought it back to Calgary. I think it was 3 years ago. I just started last year. But yeah, my goal now is to just grow this program within Calgary specifically. And like, how can we get as many students and parents to kind of know and understand what we do here and the value that we offer to the kids, and get more kids to be a part of it.
Yeah, was that a strategic move, do you know, to take it to Toronto instead of keeping it in Calgary?
That's a good question. I'm not sure like what the exact reasons were for moving to Toronto. But yeah, it might have been a strategic move. It might have just, I don't know. Yeah.
Is there a vetting process that you guys go through to select, or, out of the kids that are applying for the program, do they have to have, is there prerequisites they have to have? Are there any requirements that they need prior to being accepted?
So we like the main thing we look for is just curiosity. So the interview process, there's an application process, it involves like a written component and an interview. So it's kind of like a typical, like if you were to apply for a job, right? There's like the written component and then the interview. And so right off the bat, we're already training them, because a lot of these students, they come in, this is their first time doing an interview for anything. So they're all like, they come in, they're like a bit nervous, and they're like, they don't know what to do, and they're not like looking at you. And so it's like, but like, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to like not accept them because they're like, they're a bit awkward in an interview or whatever. We just look for, okay, kids who like are clearly just like interested, curious, passionate about making, change in the world, and want to be in an environment that supports that. And so as long as they kind of give that across and, show that they're willing to put in the effort, that's the main thing. Because TKS is really like, what you put into the program is what you get out of it. And if you're not going to put in any work and you're just expecting it to be like school where you just get fed a bunch of stuff and you're not going to do any research on your own on the side, then you're really not going to get you're not going to get the same results out of it that someone else would if they put in some extra hours on their free time, just like, writing these articles or doing some research or going down a ChatGPT rabbit hole because they're really curious and excited about like this topic that they're, looking up. So yeah, that's pretty much the main quality that we look for. It's not like we don't look at grades or anything like that. It's really centered around curiosity.
Right. What does it cost? Is there government subsidizing? Is it tied to schools and the government at all? Talk to me about all that.
Yeah, so we are funded by OSIF, so Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, and Calgary Economic Development is also like one of our supporters as well. Nice. And so the funding that we received from the government, we put towards financial aid for the students. Anyone who, like the program costs, I think it's just over $6,000 for the year, for the 10 months. It's like 6,300 or something like that. So through financial aid for students who can't afford it, we can help financially support them in the cost of the program. We also have scholarships available too. So there's like the financial aid side of it, and then there's the scholarship side of it. Scholarships like merit-based. Financial aid is like depending on the family situation.
I see. That's great. Yeah, that really helps a lot. Do you find that there's a lot of fallout? Well, here, let me start with this. How many kids do you normally have in one particular program? And what is do they last throughout the whole program generally?
There is some dropout, but not a lot. I don't know the exact percentage, but I think we started in Calgary with like 73 kids. When I first started in September, we had 73 in the cohort, and we dropped down to like 60. I think it was 64.
Okay,
so
that's not bad.
Yeah. And then it was like around 64 or 65. So it wasn't too many students. And the reasons why they left was either because they thought they weren't getting enough value in the program, but those were also typically the students that weren't putting in like the effort into the program. Or maybe they were just too busy. Maybe they were doing 10 different other extracurriculars and 100%. Couldn't like put the time towards it. But realistically, like it's interesting because, TKS I don't think it actually does take as much time as people make it out to be. It's like literally it's a 3-hour session on a weekend, and then like maybe a couple hours during the week. Maybe some weeks might be more, some weeks might be less, but like I'd say between like 2 to 3 hours weekly. So as long as and it's on their own time, and they have like me as a coach to help guide them. And literally my job is I want to give them as much time as they can to do the stuff that they want to do. Like, so yeah, it's sometimes it is interesting to me when people do drop out, especially without like, I have one-on-one availability on my calendar too, and sometimes kids don't even like take advantage of those. So I'm like, okay, before you think about dropping out, maybe you should like have a one-on-one with me first, so we can like chat about what your goals and ambitions and all that stuff even are. But yeah, some kids don't utilize the program the way it should be, and then they ended up dropping out. But yeah,
I don't find that to be a bad drop off rate at all. Let's say it's 10%. And why do I say that? You're always going to have, 10 to 15% of people who are just not interested in anything, and they may rather be at ball or they're doing something different over the weekends. And because I do think any obligation on the weekend, I think, and I'm a future parent, I think it's great for kids, but I
yeah,
don't know that kids love it themselves, right?
yeah,
Like I remember when I was a kid, I hated anything I had to do on the weekend that wasn't go have
yeah.
fun, ride a bike, and be stupid, right?
But see, that's the other thing is like, if whenever people talk about time commitment, I'm like, wait till you're like 30 and you're like actually like if you like building a company, or if you're like working some job, and like, or you like you have a family and you're working, and you're like you're gonna get busier. You're only gonna get busier in your life. Like it's not gonna be easier. So it's like, by doing the program and learning about time management, and like learning how to use Google Calendar and organizing yourself and doing all those things, like that's like, don't cop out now, like when
Right.
hey,
When this is
don't
going to
leave now
help
because the
that,
things are
right?
too busy, because like your life is only going to get busier. So learn the skills now that are required to make your life easier in the future when all those other things come in, like kids or family and
Yeah.
business and whatever meetings, like
Just
all
life.
these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Just life, period. Can you share with us maybe a story that really sticks with you? It could be a success story, it could be a dropout story, whichever you'd prefer, of just someone that, like I go back to the heartwarming story that you have of the first time you were even like that TKS was even brought up to you, when you're in your car, you have tears, there's an emotional moment where you feel great about what you do. Can you share a story just, now that maybe finds that fulfillment again that you sort of felt when you were first introduced to TKS? Like, was there something there that, you know, you met a student or you met somebody who was a part of the program and you went, wow, like this is exactly why I do this, and kind of keeps you going, I guess you can say, right?
yeah. So I mean, the reason I joined TKS was because I wanted to like, really, like, I think I just wanted to feel like I was changing people's lives for the better. And when I say that, I mean specifically like, I wanted them to come in and really like soak in like all the feedback and all the stuff that they're learning, and turn it into something. So whether that something is like an internship, or whether that something is starting their own company, or maybe going off and like working in some lab and like doing some really cool like gene editing thing, like that is what gives me the fulfillment. And so we had students in just this last 10 months who have gone on to do some pretty cool stuff, and it's like they're only just beginning, right? They're like, this is the first internship for a lot of them, or this is the first time that they're starting a company. And so just to know that I played a part in that gives me that feeling for sure. And so what fires me up even more now for next year is like, because this was my first year, so a lot of stuff that I was doing in the program this year, I was like kind of learning as I was going myself as a director. But I feel like now I have even a better grasp of the program and like how to even coach some of the kids, that I can hopefully make even better impact on them going into the next year and the years after. But yeah, a specific example, like for example, like Laksh, he's going into university next year. So he was in grade 12 while he was at TKS, came in, and he told me from the start that his goal was like, he wanted to have his own thing one. and he just didn't know what that thing was. And he was kind of interested in virtual reality a little bit, but didn't really know too much more than that. And he, like, my advice to him was really just like, okay, like, let's try to figure out areas. Like, let's not focus too much on like building the company. Let's just build your skills first. Like, you need to know how to work with virtual reality to even create a virtual
Right.
reality related company. So let's build up some skills, and then let's try to figure out like a problem area that we can try solving for. And maybe that ends up being something you're really excited about. Maybe it's not, but that's kind of the way we can go about this. And so the problem that he ended up kind of researching and finding was specifically within the aerospace and defense industry, with the reporting of defects in like manufactured products that they use. So say they receive a part and there's like a crack in it. Typically that process is paper based. So people are like writing down like, oh, there's a crack here, blah, blah, blah. He was like, maybe we can turn this and make this like more of a visual solution. So he was working with virtual reality to build a tool that is used to visualize these defects. And you can actually like, it can take a scan of whatever the object is. You can write notes on it. And instead of like it being a paper-based thing, it's like a visual, like it gives more like comprehensive data on the issue with the part. And so now he went to AWE, which is like the biggest virtual reality conference based out of LA. And he gave like a presentation on his startup to like a bunch of people at the conference. He made connections with CEOs of like big aerospace companies as well as virtual reality companies while he was there. And so just to see how far the student has come from like when he first came in being like a bit confused, not really sure about what he's doing. Also like hadn't really done much networking with people, doesn't really know how to give a presentation in front of an audience, to like going and like literally presenting an idea that he had and a prototype that he created and pitching it not just to anyone, but to like CEOs of like big, multi-million dollar companies. That was pretty impressive to me. And it's not just him, like he's one example. We have other students who are doing similar things too. So anytime I see those students go off and like do something with what they've learned in the program, it gives me that feeling of like, oh shit, like that's pretty dope.
No, that's a really cool story itself, knowing that one, there's a few of those stories. When yeah, geez, like that type of program, I think some young teenagers, adults, like some adults would love to probably be a part of. Was there a reason why the focus was only on the 13 to 18-year-olds? Likely the development stage, I'm sure, but
yeah, I think it's just like, because when you get older, it's like you have other like commitments that you're doing and stuff like that. Like you're already in the zone of like, starting families or like applying for jobs, and like all like, I don't know, you're already like kind of almost too deep to make as big of an impact on someone. Like, yes, it for sure would be helpful for like people older than 18 too. But when you're in that young age, like I think that you have, like you said, like the developmental, like it's like there's so much you can change and impact within that student that they can go off and like they have time on their hands to actually like implement these changes and make, certain, decisions with their life in terms of what they want to do. And so I think this is like the best age group to be targeting for a program like this. Yeah.
So let's go back to TKS. You said it was an 8-month vetting process for yourself.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. Like, did they look into
My
everything
God.
for you? And this is for anybody who may, because I'm assuming TKS plans to scale and, do a lot of things. And maybe if they're in another country and they happen to know this, but like, yeah, what was that process like?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was just me that went through the longest process ever or if other people went through the same. Yeah, I think I went through like it was like 7 or 8 rounds of interviews for this job. And it was all mostly with different people as well. And I actually got rejected halfway through and then got brought back in. And the reason why I got rejected though was because I was applying for a job in Vancouver initially. And they already had a Vancouver director before. like the current Vancouver director, his name's Pranav. He's been there for a while now. And I think initially the thought was they might have two directors in Vancouver. And that's what they were initially kind of like thinking I could go into, either doing that or working as a virtual director. But then they didn't have, at the time, they didn't have enough students in the Vancouver program to justify having two directors there.
I see.
And so then then I got like told like, hey, sorry, we don't have a job for you. And then like literally, I think it was like a month later, they called me back and said, hey, we still don't have Vancouver, but we have Calgary available. Would you be down to move? Because I lived in Vancouver at the time. So I was like, yeah, because I was like, this was like my top job that I wanted. So I was like, okay, like if I can keep this job, but have to move to Calgary to do it, then yeah, we'll try to make it work and figure it out. And yeah, it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it. I don't regret that decision at all. But the hiring process before that whole like situation, it was definitely like I had to meet with their like initial hiring manager person or HR person, and then I met with Brandon. At the time was head of program. Now he's working on. We have a second year program called Activate. So Brandon is working on the second year program now for Activate. And then I had to deliver a presentation in front of a bunch of their TKS kids. So they wanted to make sure like I was decent at working with the kids. And there's a few other steps mixed in there. I had to do a whole, like I wrote like a 5-page article on quantum computing. I didn't know anything about quantum computing at the time, but they were like, here, like you have like a few days to like put together everything you know about quantum computing and then go off and then teach it to these kids and like, you know, create some sort of interactive activity for them. And so that was a bit of a 2-part one. So I had to do the research. They looked at it, approved it. Then I got to go and like teach or like work with the kids virtually. Yeah. And then I think there was a couple other pieces to that. I don't even remember, but yeah, it was an 8-month, it was a long process. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about, you know, a company that hires slow and goes through a very thorough process. You know, sometimes it can be a bit much, but because there's only so much you're going to learn from someone through an interview, right? But again, but if you do stretch it out and you're putting that person through some exercises and presenting, I find any presentation or public speaking is a really good way to find out who somebody really is, because likely you're able to see certain, I don't know, flaws or certain characteristics come out at that time because they might be a little bit nervous, or if they're not nervous at all, they know how to put that show on and they'll probably keep it on, right? So
Yeah.
talk about challenges. Like, what challenges have you faced in the role? You've been year one down. What challenges have you faced? What things maybe even keep you up at night at times?
It's a good question. I think like, so there's two types of directors at TKS. There's like the in-person directors, city directors, and then virtual directors. As an in-person director, there's a lot more like coordination work that you have to do, because like when I'm creating an event for students, I want it to be like I want them to present on a stage in front of an audience, right? If you're a virtual director, it's like no matter what, you're presenting on the Zoom screen. And so some of the challenges that I experience is related around like, okay, like making sure we have like event venues and just coordinating like event planning. Essentially working with the students is like my favorite part of the job. Like
Right.
I don't even see it. Like, sure, there's like challenging times or like moments when students, like there was one girl who's like crying on one of our like one-on-ones because she was like stressed between like her like something that was happening with one of her teachers at school and TKS, and like there's just a lot going on in her plate at the same time. And so like dealing with things like that, but I don't necessarily see that as like challenging. Like I like working through those challenges or issues or problems. But like the like annoying grunt work, challenging stuff for me is like logistically planning events, you know, figuring out how to get people to attend those events, making sure we have like a packed room, figuring out, okay, how can we get the CTV news to come and like report on some of this work that we're doing? How can we get the mayor involved? Like all the logistic pieces, that's like sometimes can be a bit time consuming and challenging for me. Right now, one of my biggest challenges is like just trying to get the awareness out there to as many students as possible that this program exists. So as good of a program as TKS is, and as much like all the value that the kids are taking away from it, still like the majority of people in Calgary don't know about the program. So how do I go about, even as someone new to Calgary, I'm from Vancouver, I don't have
Right.
the high school connections here or even some of the business connections to be able to leverage and, try to get the word out as much as possible. So definitely one of my biggest challenges now is like, okay, how, especially during the summertime while we're working on enrollment for next year, like how do we get more kids to understand what we do and bring them into the program? So what I'm planning actually for next weekend is I'm hosting like a virtual kind of info session on the program and what we do and how it works. And I'm bringing in one of the founder of this company called Imply, which is a Bay Area startup, to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and stuff as well, and be like, okay, like, look, like this is someone who believes in the route and the path of like entrepreneurship and ended up like having a successful outcome of it. And like, these are the skills that you would need to build and learn to get to that point. And that's what we teach you at TKS, kind of thing.
Nice.
So we're doing like info sessions. I'm planning another event in August, which will be like an in-person kind of get-together event in Calgary. So yeah, that's some of the challenges that I'm dealing with.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about that. So your role as your responsibility with the role of a director is that it? Is it all encompassing? Like your job is to find the people, get them enrolled. Once you've enrolled them, do the teaching, do the program itself, because that seems to be the case. And if so, what type of support does TKS provide? Like, how did the first 70 people that you taught, like, how did they get enrolled? And where did we find those people in a sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, as the role of a director is kind of all encompassing. So during the year, my focus is definitely working with the kids and like creating great experience for them over the course of the 10 months. But yeah, especially during the off months and, even like sometime during the week, each week, I'm working on like, okay, how can we like get the awareness out there and like work on the enrollment side of things too? Because if we can't get kids in the program, then we don't have a program to begin with. So we do have a marketing team too, and they're also based out of Calgary. Their focus initially for the last like 5 or 6 months has really been focused on building out and growing the virtual program. But they also do help with like, preparing marketing materials, and like they put up Instagram ads and things like that within the different cities to try and help drive awareness for the program. But a large part of it does fall on the directors as well to actually go out and be the boots on the ground people, going to events, going and sponsoring, a robotics competition, going into like schools and doing presentations. I went into Bearspaw Christian School earlier this year and gave a presentation on AI, for example. I've gone into a few other schools and just given presentations on entrepreneurship. I'm going to STEM Innovation Academy in August to talk about, taking the leap into entrepreneurship. So like, I'm just trying to like literally get into as many places as I can. And then, yeah, during the year, my focus kind of switches to like, okay, work with kids time now.
Very cool. Very cool. What is there sort of a mission statement that TKS has? Like, it sounds like impact obviously is one of those, but like, what is the overall goal? It seems like scaling and growing is a part of that, but like, what is the main focus and goal that TKS has?
Well, the main focus and goal is definitely like creating these like amazing kids. That's the reason TKS started. That's the reason why all of us as directors are working this job. It's not for like, we're not like super jazzed, I would say, about like sales and enrollment and like all that kind of stuff. Like that's just part of the job.
Of course.
Like our favorite part of the job is like for everyone, I'm pretty sure. Like I don't think anyone would disagree with me that the favorite part of the job is like working with the kids and like doing these one-on-ones with them and like seeing their growth throughout the year. Enrollment just happens to be like a part of the job that we need to do in order to keep the program running.
I see. And what, does this tie in with some of the goals, I guess, that you've had? Like, I think when you're in VC, you may not have seen that yet. I mean, clearly you were doing it naturally to work with kids and find the fulfillment through it, but how does this tie to your goals? What does the future look like for yourself? And what are the things that you want to achieve, not only with the company, but personally?
Yeah, I think like, I just like, for me, I mentioned it earlier, but like, I really just like, I get satisfaction out of seeing these like asymmetric outcomes from students And so like for me, it's like as long as I'm out there like continuing to mentor and shape kids' futures, like I'm like very happy with the role that I have, and the work that I'm doing, and I find it to be very fulfilling. And like, you know, a lot of the kids, they came up to me after like once the program ended, and they would like tell me like the impact that I had on them over the year. And so like things like that are like when I get messages like that, or kids come up and tell me, or even if I just see what the kids are doing, like that's the kind of stuff that keeps me motivated to continue doing this job. In terms of my growth in the company, I mean, this is only like I'm not even 1 year in yet. And so I think I just want to continue to become a better director. Like even like I definitely didn't do a bad job as a director. I think I did a pretty good job as a first year director, but I also see ways that I could have been even better and improved, and like, you know, certain ways to go about coaching a student. So it's very easy when a kid comes to you and like it's like, hey, can you help me with this? It's like you can just give them the answer kind of thing. But like the better coach wouldn't give them the answer. They would like probe them and ask them questions so that they get to the answer. And so I noticed myself, like especially initially in the program, like I was very quick to just give the answer. And
Right.
I noticed like over time I was like, oh, maybe that's like not the like, as a coach, it should be coming from them. And so like working a little bit on like question asking and making sure I know like lead them in the direction where they like it comes from them. So like little things like that, I think I could improve upon. Even now, like I mentioned, one of my challenges for me was like event planning and all that kind of stuff. Like I think that's actually going to be easier next year because I've kind of made those connections already now with the event spaces, and I know certain people now through doing the program this year that I think it'll make that like grunt work style stuff a little bit easier for next year. Um, so yeah, I'm just excited for next year, to be honest. I think it's like something I'll continually be getting better at, and I guess
So
we'll just see where it
all
goes.
in all, you could just use an assistant, is what you're saying.
Yeah, honestly, like I think, I mean, so I do want an assistant, and TKS has said that like if I'm able to get more enrolled students in the program in Calgary, then like yes, like we'll bring on an assistant. Like there's no way I can take 150 kids and just like by myself like be able to allocate the time and effort to like help each of them like to the best of my abilities. And so yeah, if I'm able to get like a certain like to that level of like students enrolled in the program, then for sure like we'll hire a, you know, a second person to be, you know, a co-director with me in Calgary. And that's ultimately the goal. Like that's what I want. Like I think it'll be this program, like as a director too, it'll be way more fun with a second director. We can like bounce off of each other. It'll be more of a vibe. So like I definitely want that, and I think it would be better from the students to get another, like a secondary perspective. And so yeah, that's like hopefully next year we can get like way more kids in. We can afford to bring in a second director to come in and work with the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to jump around, but like, how does TKS sort of measure your success in that role? Do they have people that are with you during some of your sessions, or are they looking for feedback from the kids? Like, how do they measure your success?
I mean, I think part of it would be dropout rates. So like if like half the program is dropping out, that's probably a bad sign. So as long as not too many people are dropping out of your program, then you're probably doing a decent job. Sometimes we have, you know, Naveed actually, who's like one of the founders of the company. He was in Calgary last summer, and like we ran a session together. He came and checked out one of my sessions in, I think it was like November last year. Uh, Also when I'm doing a virtual session. So I also like I do two, or last year at least, I ran two in-person sessions, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and then I also ran a virtual session on Fridays. And so I had kids from all over the world join my virtual one, and sometimes we'll have directors like join into those sessions as well. So, and we also have global sessions where all the directors are part of, and so
Cool.
I led a couple of those as well. Um, yeah, like they have visibility into the like work I'm doing. We have weekly meetings to talk about how sessions went, things that could have gone better, all those kinds of things. And then yeah, as long as students aren't dropping out like crazy, and then also like at the end of the year, like what outcomes did the students have? Like if nobody ended up doing anything at the end of the program,
Right.
it's like, okay, well that's not what we want either. as the more students we have, like Laksh, for example, who's going off and doing crazy things like building his own company and going and speaking at conferences, like we want that. And so like we have, like I had other students, Isa, she just got an internship working at a biotech company. Harini's working for a startup space company, which is actually, funny enough, founded by some other TKS student. I can't think off the top of my head, but Adam, he's building an app. He got an internship building an app for like a furniture company that's doing like they're dressers that also fold laundry or something like that. It's like smart furniture, but he's building their app. And so we have like a bunch of these like stories just within Calgary of students going off and doing those kind of cool things as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. Like when I was 15 years old, I wasn't doing anything like that. So
no question.
Yeah, the more stories like that come out of the program, the better it is. Like the better it looks for you as a director as well.
Perfect. Just, we're coming close to time now. I, wanted to ask you if we had a listener that was kind of in the education or the board of education, like what would be the message to them? Because it's pretty clear a program like this should almost be embedded into the curriculum of today's education. What would your message be?
Well, it's funny you say that because just I think it was yesterday I received a note from an email from a principal, and she said like, oh, this would actually be perfect for like something that should be integrated into our like schooling, like as like credits for school.
Right.
And I don't actually know how that like getting credits piece works, so I have to do a little homework on that. But yeah, I totally think that like it would be I think it's a super important thing for students to be doing, and like any way to kind of integrate what we're doing with TKS like into the like regular school system. I'm definitely for that. And then just like literally any chance that we can collab with other educational institutions or whatever, like I think that's like the most important thing, because like the reason I do the job isn't like, and the reason why anyone at TKS does this job isn't for like money or anything. It's for ultimately helping provide the best opportunities for students. So if the school board wants to like collaborate and like potentially bring in workshops, or like TKS like hosted workshops in the school or anything like that, like that's something we'd totally be open to doing.
That's fantastic. I based on what you've told me and some of the outcomes already, that's a huge benefit to our youth and the next generation. What would your message be to them, to the kids that might be listening or interested? I know I have some young guys that'll be probably listening to this. What would you say to them about this program and how it could affect them?
Yeah, I'd say like, it's okay to venture outside of the traditional path a little bit. I think it's so easy for students to just be like, okay, like my life is school and then my life is university. And I think like it's scary to think like, not that every student in TKS goes off and starts their own company or anything like that. But like thinking of like starting your own company or like potentially being like, hey, mom and dad, like I'm not going to go to university and I'm going to start this company instead. Like that's kind of can be a scary thing to think about. And it's like, well, where are you going to get money? And like, if you don't do university or if you drop out of university, then like, you're not going to have a degree. And that's like the whole thing. That's like the whole point. Right. So like that, but I'd say like the world needs more innovators. Like I read a stat somewhere. It's like the world today has like 100,000, or Canada today specifically has 100,000 less entrepreneurs than it did 20 years ago. And especially with like all of the change that's happening in the world today, like we should have more. Like we need more innovators out there. We need more people that are able to be willing to adapt and change and like work with AI and quantum computing. There's going to be a whole thing with that coming out in the next decade. So it's like we need to like be in this innovative mindset and not like fall away from that. And so I think encouraging students to go down the route of like entrepreneurship is like important to do, and like they're at an age where they can afford to like take a few risks here and there, right? Like they can always go back and if not saying that this is the path for everyone, but like if they wanted to go back, anyone can go back and complete their university degree or whatever they want to do. But I think like just like being willing to take the risk is super important, because you don't know what's on the other side. We have like if you look at some of the TKS alumni, we have students that like have gone on to start like they're companies that just raised like $20 million as like a 20 something year old. Like Ben Nashman, he started a company called Synex Medical, which is they're building non-invasive glucose monitoring devices. I think it was last year he raised $21 million for his company. He had another student graduate from TKS, started a company called Utopia Labs, got acquired by Coinbase. We had another student who, I don't know if you've heard of Bordy AI. There's two TKS students who are co-founders of a company called Bordy AI, which is like it's like a voice AI platform where it connects you with like it's like a professional networking platform, but it's voice activated. They just raised like $23 million. I think it was earlier this year. And so like, and then those ones who don't go off and start the companies, like they're working at places like OpenAI. They're working at places like Tesla. They're working at places like Neuralink. Like the youngest employees at some of these top companies are typically TKS students. And so by taking that risk and like taking the approach of like project building and creating this portfolio, which is everything we teach at TKS, like can get you these like crazy opportunities that are, I would argue, more valuable than if you were to waste 4 years, going to university, getting a degree, and then like not knowing what you want to do with your life when you get to that point. And so it's like, okay, how do we create more of that in the world? How do we get students working on things and building things faster? I think there was a tweet by Elon Musk, or I don't forget who it was. I'm pretty sure it was Elon, but it was like, here, you apply for these jobs. These are the jobs we have available. We're not even going to look at resumes. Just show us what you've been working on. So like less and less are resumes and degrees they're not as important as they used to be. And it's more about, okay, what can you show? What can you show us that's what we're going to hire you off of based on what you've done, not what you've built. What you've built, not like what grade you had in high school or whatever it is. So
your portfolio in a sense, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my advice is like to students is like portfolio build, like just do stuff and like be willing to take a risk and put yourself out there rather than always just thinking that you have to take the safe path.
Yeah, the conventional. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Last question for you. I thought that might have been the last, but I'm going to keep you for another little bit. Talk about business. You talked about quantum computing. You've talked about AI. Obviously, those are the hot topics in our world today. But what are some emerging places? Let's speak to sort of the VC or the investors. Like, what are some places that you would suggest people start to look into if they're looking to grow into the next stage of their portfolio, or they're looking for the next, we won't even say big thing, but maybe a lucrative thing or something that they want to get involved in?
Well, artificial intelligence for sure. Like everyone needs to be aware of what it is and how it works, and get how can we start implementing this within our business to make it more more efficient or whatever the case is. I went to see Gary Vaynerchuk speak at Inventures this year. This was a couple months ago in Calgary, and he actually took some time after to speak with some of our students on this topic of like artificial intelligence in the world today. And one of the students raised his hand and he was like, "Hey, I'm like interested in starting like an education company like with artificial intelligence." And Gary's like, "Oh, so you're just starting an education company?" And the kid was like, "Yeah, but it's with artificial intelligence." And and he was like, "Yes, it's just an education company." He's like, every company, like no matter what industry you're in, like AI is not like a differentiator anymore. It's like, it is part of the equation. It's like baseline, it's table stakes. So I think like the advancements that are happening right now in AI are like super important to be aware of, and everyone should be starting to play around with the different tools that are available to them. Like ChatGPT is it's old news now, but like, man, like the stuff that it can give you is pretty crazy. And it comes down to like being able to prompt engineer. Like how can you like ask it the right questions to give it the stuff that you want? The jobs of like software developers, like who knows where that's going to be in a few years now, like when you can have like AI making websites on your behalf and things like that. I'm actually starting my own business right now, on the side. It's a cosmetics business. It's called Nude Melon. Shout out to Nude Melon.
Nude Melon.
Nude Melon. But yeah, I was like looking into Shopify and how to like create my site. If I was to get a developer to build my site, it would have costed like $12,000. But I've just been like ChatGPT has been building it for me just through like prompting it and making sure like I'm giving it the code and like making it change it. Like it's pretty crazy what it can do. So yeah, I would say like AI is a big one, especially now. A lot of like I was watching, I forget what the podcast name is, but apparently 2025 is the year of the robotics. Like you start to see like things like the Optimus robot or Figure One robot. There's a lot of like crazy things that robots can do nowadays. And it incorporates AI. Like they use vision detection to like see, like to pick up objects. And then there's like, yeah, just like there's a ton of stuff that you can do with it. Some people are getting in relationships with robots nowadays. Robotics is basically, it's like a big, it's starting to be a pretty big prevalent thing in the world today. I saw someone who got in a relationship with a robot.
Holy crap.
Yeah, like there was like, or like there was a Reddit post and it was like some kid posted on there. It was like, I'm a bit worried about my dad. Like he's like, I think he's like starting to get in a relationship with a robot or something like that. I don't know if you saw like I forget what the conference was. I saw it I was scrolling on Instagram, but I think it was like some big robotics conference that happened at the start of the year. And they were showing like literally like it looked like a female and it could talk to you and all this kind of stuff. And like it's like, oh my God, this is like where is the world going right now? But yeah. Like have you seen that movie Subservience with Megan Fox, I think? It was on Netflix.
No, you know what? I've seen some clips of it, and it's very eerie for sure.
Yeah. I feel like it's like, yeah, it's kind of getting a bit scary to be honest. It's like it's probably not like a great thing for the world.
Well, it's likely getting to a place like I think about how technology has sort of accommodated, like it's been created to accommodate all of the things that we don't like to do or things that we don't like to face. And some of it is just going to redefine what a relationship looks like because there in any relationship, I just got married this year, there's always going to be things that are conflicting or cause tensions. Well, if you have a robot that's AI, it's likely going to just accommodate you and do the things that you want to do. So to me, it's a natural progression. It's not a good progression, but it's a natural progression for a lot of technology. But it is scary because it's here today.
Yeah. There's always like a good and a bad side of it. Like there's so much
Mhm.
like robotics and obviously like it can help like if you have like a robot that can like go and like pick up a package and like
Yeah,
move it and do some of this grunt work like in business, like sure, like that's cool. That's great. But then yeah, if it gets to the point of like taking over like how like relationships and like people now you have people walking around with like AI girlfriends and husbands and whatever. It's like,
right.
holy, that's
Well,
when it gets a bit scary.
I remember reading something about how the longevity of a person is based off of, like, or what muscle is most important to longevity, and it's their thighs, because it's the thing that helps people walk to their friends. And so essentially saying that company, community, and that sense of like friendship is one of the most important pieces to longevity. Well, I'm wondering, could that be a good thing for AI and robotics? Because, maybe some of the elderly could have people there spending time all the time with them, or, giving more time to their children and grandkids to spend time because robots and AI is taking care of other things. It's likely that's not the case because if people have time because robots are doing everything, they're probably doing other stupid things. But
Yeah.
I hope that that's a positive that comes out of this, but it's definitely scary is a good word for it, and any person I think above the age of 30 it's probably a bit foreign to them, right?
Well, same with like we were talking about AI. Like you think of all the good it can do, but there's also like even like from a stance of climate change, like it takes so much energy to run like artificial intelligence. Like if you like I think it's forget the exact number, but if you prompt something on ChatGPT versus prompting it on Google, it uses 10 times the amount of energy or
Wow,
something like that.
I didn't know
And
that.
especially and then when you're generating images and generating videos using AI, like it takes more energy to like come up with all that. And so like, what does that mean from like from like a climate change kind of standpoint when, you have these data centers that we need to build more and more of them as with this growth of AI. And then how does that look from an energy standpoint? And then you're looking into potentially alternative energy sources like, what about like geothermal energy, or like, what about other renewables like solar? Like, can we even do that? Like, cause with AI, like solar only works when there's sunlight, right? So it's like, but we need AI 24/7. So it's like, then our data centers need to run 24/7. So what kind of energy can be even used? So we can go down like a whole rabbit hole of like, okay, like there's this rise in AI, which is a good thing, could be a bad thing, but then we have this energy problem that's linked to it. And so they all kind of like play into like not all, everything, but a lot of things play into each other. And so as long as, I guess going back to your point, but like just being aware of like what's happening in the world today, and then like thinking through the nth order effects of these innovations and things that are coming out, I think is probably just like super important. So like, it's like, yeah, we can talk about AI, but then we can talk about climate change and like energy. And then we can also talk about like robotics and how AI is being implemented into that. And like, we can talk about like girlfriends and boyfriends. Like there's just so many, like we can go all over the place with.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So, no,
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed this conversation. Again, man, I thank you for coming on. I trust that this won't be the only time we have a conversation. I hope we could do it in person at some point in time. That will come next. But I'm super happy to hear that your first year went well. It's pretty clear that you're excited and you're passionate about it. And to me today, as a 39-year-old man, I think that's the most important thing in life today is, hey, listen, can we make a living doing something we love, something we care about, and be excited to go to work every day? And then of course impact, like have great impact on the youth, or I can't remember the time, but there was a age range that I think Jack Ma said, when you're 30 to 40, do this. When you're 40 to 50, do this. And I think it was 40 to 50 or 50 to 60. Well, I think it's 40 to 50 where he said, start to build something for yourself. And then I think at some point in time, he said to really start to help and support the youth and support the next generation. Because I think there's a lot of people that go away from that. But I think today that time frame has sort of moved up a little bit because of the innovation and because of how things are ramping up so quickly. So it's really nice that you're able to do that. I'm really happy for you. And I hope that we get a chance to do this again, man. I really do.
But yeah, we will for sure.
Any last words?
No, man, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here as well. And I enjoy being part of this podcast. So appreciate you.